welcome to this fourth video in our early learning series. Today is also the last video in which we are going to be focusing on auditory perceptual skills. So make sure that you catch up on previous videos, and you will find the links for those in this article below. Right, so today I'm going to be focusing with you on the skills of auditory closure, auditory figure ground perception, and auditory memory. The first of these is auditory closure. And auditory closure enables us to understand what someone is trying to say, even if we've only heard part of the instruction or the word. This is super important, for instance, when your child is in a classroom and the teacher is giving an instruction and suddenly an unexpected noise appears, like perhaps somebody drives past on a motorcycle or the gardener outside starts a chainsaw, and your child might have only heard half of what the teacher is saying, but they understand completely what it is that they have to do because of that auditory closure skill. Auditory closure also helps your child to predict what is going to come next in a sentence or the letters that are coming in a word. And this is really easy to practice with your child at home. So with younger children, we want to give them a sentence and see if they can predict what the last word would be. So easy examples would be, for instance, to say, after breakfast, we brush our, see if your child can say teeth. Or we use an umbrella when it, and have your child complete that sentence. With slightly older children, from about the age of 3.5, you could say part of a word and have them guess the rest of that word. So easy examples, if I'm thinking of words like crocodile, aeroplane, dinosaur, I would say crocod, aerop, dinos, and see if they can figure out what that word is. You could also make this slightly more difficult. So you can also delete the beginning of a word and just give them the end and see if they can figure out what that word is. But there is something I want to mention here. If you are going to be deleting the first part of a word, don't stay silent and just give your child the end. So as an example, if I say dial, you're going to have a relatively hard time figuring out what I'm thinking of. So always remember to hum the first bit of a word that you are deleting and just say the end. So if I'm thinking of the word crocodile, I would say dial. You see how that makes it easier. The second skill is auditory figure ground perception. Now, figure ground perception means the ability to focus on something in the foreground while there are other things happening in the background. Right? And with auditory perception, that specifically means being able to focus on a voice in the foreground while there's background noise, like your child would use in a busy classroom. There's always a little bit of humming and buzzing going on in a classroom, and your child is going to need that skill in order to focus on what the teacher is saying when she gives instructions. So an easy way to practice this with your child is to have some background music playing, and then see if your child can hear what you are saying above the music. Although I have to say that this is a skill that we practice so often without even realizing it. Whenever you're in a busy restaurant or a crowded space or in a mall, you are going to be using your auditory figure ground skills. So probably not one that you need to use too much time focusing on specifically. And the last aspect is auditory memory. Now, again, you can immediately see why that is so important. If you can't remember what you've heard, you're not going to be learning. And your child will use auditory memory skills not just for remembering instructions, but also for remembering what sound it is that they need to pair with a visual stimulus like a letter. Right, so ways in which you can practice auditory memory with your child would be, for instance, to give them, I always say, I'm going to give you a special word for the day. and then to see whether they can remember that word an hour or two after you've given it to them. And that can be any word. I find words like dragon and unicorn and fairy tend to work really well. With older children, you can start giving them a little bit more information to remember. Perhaps tell them a story and see for how long afterwards they can still remember the details of that story. You can also give them numbers in a sequence, like 5, 7, 8, 2, 3, and see whether they can say it back to you in that sequence as well. Right, so overall, I've tried very hard to highlight each auditory perception aspect for you, but I think it's important to mention that all of these aspects are so integrated. So you are hardly ever going to be doing a listening task and not using at least 3 or 4 or 5 or all of these skills together. So there are some general activities that you can use that are always going to be practicing your child's auditory perceptual skills. One of the most important things that you can do with your child on a daily basis is reading. Reading stories to them is absolutely excellent for auditory perception. We also know that this is a specifically critical period for the brain in terms of establishing patterns for language. So between the ages of 2 and 7 years old is a sensitive period for learning a second language. If you're going to introduce a second language, do it now. You can also do things like play games, musical chairs, and musical statues are really good for auditory perception. Games like I Spy, the shopping game that we discussed last week, Broken Telephone, Simon Says, and Wolfie Wolfie, What's the Time? I don't know if anyone remembers that game. I used to have ages of fun playing that. And if you don't remember, let me know. I'll type it out for you in the comments below. Also, listening to music, listening to radio programs, specifically podcasts, and if you're able to live stream BBC Children's Radio, that is absolutely an excellent channel for children to be listening to. And just all of the fun rhyming, making up your own rhymes, the sound jar that I've shared with you last time. So lots and lots of auditory perceptual activities. I know that I've emphasized a few times how important auditory perception is for learning to read. I have to admit that I'm really glad that we are done with the auditory perceptual videos because I found it so difficult to portray these auditory aspects on video. And I'm actually super excited to be able to finally start with the visual perception that we will discuss from next week's videos. Thanks everyone. I'll see you then. Hi everyone, my name is Anel Annandale and I'm an educational psychologist. Here at Child Psych, we believe very strongly that each and every child deserves the best possible start in life. And for that reason, we have put together a series of videos on early learning. Ideally, these videos are aimed at early childhood educators and parents who have children between the ages of 2 and 6 years old. These videos will be available for free. You are welcome to share them, and we are going to try and keep them as short as we possibly can. Also remember that you can access the videos via Facebook and also via Instagram. Lastly, if you have any questions or comments, please do leave them for us below and we would be happy to answer them. Thank you.